All right. So welcome, everybody. I see that a lot of people are joining in. We'll just give it a couple of more minutes and then we'll get started. See lots of familiar names here in the attendees list. That's great. All right, just 30 seconds more, folks, and then we'll start. All right, let's get going. So first of all, welcome everybody. It's my privilege and pleasure to be hosting this webinar from Benori. It's really wonderful to see so many people already join in. And given the absolutely brilliant speakers that we have today, I have absolutely no surprise that so many people are attending this particular webinar. As you can see, the title of the webinar today is Harnessing Gen AI. All of us have been inundated with messages and information coming through research reports being published, a lot of global leaders commenting on what's happening with Gen AI. So today is a very, very small attempt of ours to get things in the right perspective and really figure out what is going on, what might be the impact, how would things pan out, and why should every one of us be extremely careful and really become knowledgeable about this topic. Right. So with me today on the panel are two very close friends, but at the same time, illustrious leaders in their own right. First is Manas. Manas, and I will introduce him formally later on when I hand over the mic to him. He's essentially the co-founder of Nagarro, and now I was indeed pleasantly surprised to know a few weeks back that Nagarro is closing into 20,000 people in terms of his headcount. The other person is Rajiv. Rajiv is a senior partner and a managing director at BCG. And I will also introduce him further as we go along. So today, as I mentioned, the topic of discussion is Gen AI, technologies, trends, and how it is already impacting various sectors. Traditional business models are getting destroyed. There's increased efficiency. There is innovation. New forms of competitive advantage or disadvantage are getting created. So today's session, I would first give some introductory comments over the next 7-8 minutes. And in this time frame, we will also have some interesting polls, a few of them. And around 5:15 or so, I will introduce Manas and hand it over to him for his comments and his observations, maybe 8 to 10 minutes. Then do the same thing with Rajiv at around 5:25. Around 5:35-ish, we should be over with our own presentations. And then the last 20-25 minutes, we will just open it up for question and answers. I would request all of you to please keep on typing in your comments and your questions in the Q&A window. and I would try to cover as many of those as possible towards the Q&A session. So in terms of just setting the context, um, the first thing I would like to do is to have the first poll. So if I can request my colleague Arun to please bring it up, and if everybody can take 10 seconds just to answer this very simple these very simple questions. So the first question is, how familiar are you with GenAI? The second one is, are you currently using GenAI? All right. I hope everybody has filled this out. Arun, can you please bring up the results? So, not surprisingly, 87% of the audience here is familiar, somewhat or very familiar. 13% say that they are not familiar at all. That's fine. The second question around, are you currently using Gen AI? Again, 84% are saying they are, and 16% are saying they are not. So interesting results, but not surprising. So if we go on, move on, essentially, Satya Nadella has basically said that this is the next tidal wave. And as especially Rajiv would cover some of the aspects around Gen AI and more. So it's, earlier it was artificial intelligence, then machine learning, and then deep learning. And now we are reaching a level of Gen AI. Clearly, the outputs can be text, image, audio, or video. And a lot of people ask, what is new, what is different? And of course, both our guests would cover this in much greater detail. But whether it's a expanded functionality, it's increased customization, it's definitely ease of use. So the user interfaces are very, very easy to navigate. And of course, before I forget, cost. I mean, just the sheer democratization of AI that has happened with the generation of Gen AI is no joke, right? If you move on, essentially, everybody has been talking about this, but three big voices. You can read these things, but I especially like the one that Bill Gates said, which is that the development of AI is as fundamental as the creation of the microprocessor, the personal computer, the internet, and the mobile phone. It will change the way people work, learn, travel, get healthcare, and communicate with each other. And of course, the other leaders are saying that this is just the beginning. But of course, Paul at Accenture says that there are so many opportunities, but it also has huge, deep-rooted fundamental implications for organizations. Moving on, if you really look at it, we should now get into the second poll. Sorry, my bad. So with that, can I request Arun to please bring up the second poll? And here you can actually give you can choose multiple options. This is a multiple choice option questions. So please take some seconds and choose as many options as you want. So the first question is, which industry sector may have the most transformative impact through Gen AI? And the second one is, which aspect of Gen AI implementation do you find the most intriguing? Arun, can we bring up the results? All right, he's telling me to wait. So let's give people another 15, 20 seconds. So clearly, and you will have to scroll down to the second question on the screen that has come up. As far as industries are concerned, not surprisingly, BFSI stands out, and the next is TMT. And interestingly, professional services is more than consumer packaged goods, which is a very interesting thing. And then, of course, healthcare is there. As far as the second question is concerned, this is a no-brainer. I mean, everybody knows that increasing productivity increases is the main thing, but of course, customer experience, R&D, innovation are also important drivers. Excellent. Okay, so if we just quickly cover some of these aspects, Arun, if we can move to the next slide. So various research reports have done this kind of a word cloud, but as you can see in our question also, it was mentioned, efficiency, personalization, customer centricity, industry specific solutions, all of these are really very important areas of development and impact. But of course, you have others also like fraud detection or customer service and so on. Excuse me. Let us quickly just spend 30 seconds each on 5 industries, some of our own analysis and research that we have done at Benori. So whether it's BFSI, you look at companies like Bloomberg, Morgan Stanley, conversational finance is a big thing. Fraud detection is a very, very big thing. So Capital One, PayPal, looking at doing a variety of different stuff. And clearly on the investment side, also companies like JP Morgan are initiating a lot of different projects. If we move on to CPG companies, very, very interesting. Our research talked about AB InBev has developed the first autonomous AI-generated beer. It's called Bex Autonomous. So very interesting. At the same time, CocaCola is using GenAI for content marketing. IKEA collects consumer preferences. And Unilever on the customer experience side has this platform called Alex, which actually filters emails, customers' emails, and responds only to the legit ones. Going on quickly, healthcare, huge things, massive things happening in healthcare. And I do believe that healthcare impact might actually be as big, if not bigger, than BFSI. But whether it's drug discovery on the time side, on the universe of molecules that you can go through, reduce cost, it is just very, very disruptive. Mayo Clinic has an alliance with Microsoft, Google, where they have developed a new gen search tool which allows workers to analyze patients' medical history very quickly. Just quickly, trying to wrap this up over the next 1 minute. Clearly, there are a lot of different things happening on TMT as well. I won't go through this, and a lot of this will actually be covered by Manas and to some extent by Rajiv as well. Professional services, the last one, yes, it's here. Again, one interesting question that we at Benori tried to answer for a major consulting firm was they are at X 100,000 people right now, whether after 5 years they will be X plus 100,000 or X minus 100,000, right? So a lot of different implications, and Manus will touch upon this a little bit around jobs and how things might pan out. What I will do is quickly request Arun to bring up the last and final poll, and let's quickly do this. And after that, I will essentially hand it over to Manas. So this poll is about, do you think the benefits far outweigh the potential risks of GenAI? And the second question is, what do you think is the most concerning factor impeding GenAI adoption? Arun, if you can bring up the results. People are still typing out. Okay. All right, so not a surprise, benefits outweigh risks, clear. And very interesting. I would have thought the second question would be slightly different, but 41% people talk about bias and inaccuracy as being the biggest impediment. I would have thought it would be implementation challenges, but nonetheless, this is very interesting. All right, so with that, let me hand it over to Manas. And just in terms of Manas's introduction, as I mentioned, he's a co-founder of Nagarro, and currently, I love his title. He serves as a custodian of entrepreneurship in the organization. He has a PhD and BTech from IIT Delhi and an MS from Stanford. And he's also worked as a researcher at Harvard Business School. And clearly in his role at Nagarro, he advises Fortune 500 companies all the time around their IT strategy and other aspects. And he's also a founder and trustee at Plaksha University. Manas, it's an honor to have you here. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ashish, and thanks for having me here with Rajiv and you on this very exciting subject. So I won't be able to talk in the breathless style that you have, so a little bit more slow, but I think the excitement is really there, and it's a cause to be breathless about. The excitement is there with our clients. The excitement is there internally, amongst our colleagues. The media is talking about GenAI, and even investors are wondering what it means for our industry. And I will try to sort of frame it for our industries, in our industry's context, right? There is this consensus that's emerging that, like these previous waves of technology, this is something that will drive the industry forward and to the next level. There's a lot written about it, different perspectives. Let me give you the Nagarro perspective of it, right? So our perspective is that this is really a transformation opportunity for our clients, right? So there are lots of different point solutions out there that you have talked about, but ultimately it's a transformation opportunity. And it's Gen AI is a pillar of that, but it's a broader AI transformation. And the right way to think about it in our mind is that it's an AI transformation journey with Gen AI as one of the pillars, right? And it's not a 3-month journey. It's not a 3-month journey. I mean, it's not a 30-year journey either, but it's maybe a 3-year journey, right? And these are early days in this journey, and the tools are still evolving. The rules are still evolving. The tools and rules are still evolving. And I think it's really important for us, as companies, to think about what it is that we want to do with these tools, right? So it's not just about the tool being the goal, but what do we want to be today, right? Or rather, what do we want to be every day? And what are the things that at least we believe as Nagarro, and because we have had a whole history of trying to build ourselves into an agile organization, or keep our agility as a small company as we scaled, we believe that this idea that we're calling the fluidic enterprise is the way that AI will enable our customers, right? So think of a company that is as responsive as it can be, as experiential, as intelligent, as personalized, also sustainable, of course, but creative, and so that image of what that company can be internally. I mean, if you look at any company, most companies haven't evolved that much from the last 20 years or 40 years. They're not that much smarter. And there is this great opportunity, I think, once in a lifetime opportunity to sort of re-engineer and transform our companies and how they work with their customers in an intelligent way. That's one point. The second point is that this is a lot of hard work, right? So, it's a lot of serious engineering required to make this happen. And it's really a story about data, right? And so data engineering will make or break this effort at our clients, right? So it's data, it's AI cloud work, it's ML ops or LLM ops, it's hardcore engineering, testing, for example, right? So it's very easy to make a cool POC and sort of put it out there, and even my school-going kids can do that. But to actually make something in a production ready, that in a real enterprise environment, is far more difficult, right? And So some of the easy wins will come, of course, at the edge of the enterprise or in non-critical stuff. But the really solid changes will require a lot of engineering. So, I mean, Gen AI is good at some things and not so good at some things. So if you had this, the Chandrayaan is being landed right now on the moon. If you had to do that, I mean, you could use Gen AI for some of the things, but you wouldn't use it or couldn't use it easily for some of the other decisions it has to make. So there are technical challenges. And you talked of hallucinations, and I love that line that you had, that sometimes even hallucinations can be, help you with creativity, but reproducibility, explainability, bias, etc. There are all these challenges. And then there are business challenges, of course, IP, data privacy, ROI, because this is compute heavy stuff. What's the unit cost of inference, right? And a lot of decisions have to be made. Are you building your own foundation models? Are you using someone else's models, but with your own proprietary data and every variant of that? And also more prosaic things like vendor lock-in and things like that, right? So I think, especially in large companies, which are very complex and highly architected and lots of regulations and lots of countries and lots of different contexts, you definitely need a very strong engineering approach. And so, it's not just the AI people that you need around the AI people, data engineering people, you need creatives, people who can run these projects and all of that, right? So that's the second part. So AI is a huge transformation and it requires a lot of engineering, which is all, which is good for our industry. And the third, I think, is, how do you approach it, right? So this is, you could be in an analysis paralysis mode, or you could be in something more agile. Even the transformation to this fluidic enterprise could be a fluidic transformation with. So I think the mixing and marrying of these innovation methodologies and agile methodologies to actually make this happen is how we think our clients need to transform. So, I won't go into all the point examples that we've been talking about, because you talked about, maybe 20 or 30 of them, and they're all there, right? They're all the things that we're working on. But I think what we are really focusing on now, and we see industry focusing on now, is more of this transformation approach, a bit like the digital transformation approach that we had some years ago. So I will also say that most of the industry, because we also eat our own dog food, so we're also looking at where Gen AI will play in our own work, right? So whether it's on the talent side, because we are a lot about talent, so whether it's in hiring and talent allocation or trainings or proposal creation, and of course generating code, which is the most common question. Are you using it for generating code? But here I have to share that a lot of our clients are still very nervous about using Gen AI. So we are using it at some places, but not all over, not as often as you would like to at this point. Which brings me nicely to the jobs question, and I have a couple of minutes left. So I think that the question has been asked a lot. Does this eviscerate the industry? Yeah, and we have heard this before in the last 20 years for technology after technology, whether it was SaaS or RPA or mobile, and it was like or productivity increases in general, right? So productivity, the time taken to write a piece of code is probably already 1/10 of what it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So this is a productivity increase for sure. But these enterprise contexts are so complex, right, that I think there is a long way for us to go. And there's a lot more that people will want to do with technology. So I think that this is absolutely not an issue that will challenge jobs in our industry. I'm not talking about other industries, but it will not challenge jobs very significantly. There will be a productivity increase, and maybe there's a slowdown in hiring to account for that. But in the long run, I think it's a positive. I do think, though, that there are parts of the portfolio, for example, software product development, for example, which is more homogeneous, right? Where or maybe lift and shift kind of projects and stuff like that. I mean, that part would be impacted. I think the kinds of work that we do, and when I say our industry, I think maybe I'm calling it too narrowly, but the digital engineering kind of work will still remain. So that's a quick summary of how we see this evolving, and happy to take more questions at the end, Ashish, as your viewers have them.
Sure. No, excellent, Manu. So one question that I would pose to you when we come to the Q&A session is around skilling. What do you do around skilling, right? How do you prepare people to grab these jobs? All right. So it's my privilege to introduce my next speaker, Rajiv. As I mentioned earlier, he's a managing director and a senior partner at the Boston Consulting Group, or BCG, as it is more famously called. He leads the TMT practice, has been a technologist throughout his career, whether it's ERP, digital analytics, or of course, more recently, Gen AI. And needless to say, he has been advising clients on their most burning issues and futuristic issues around technologies and how things might shape up. He's an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, and before that, a BTech in electrical engineering from IIT Kanpur. Rajiv, it's a pleasure and a privilege to have you here. Over to you. And as I was mentioning earlier, Arun, you can bring up the slides that Rajiv has sent to us.
Thank you. Thanks, Manas, and thanks, Ashish. In your first poll, I wasn't allowed to answer because hosts and panelists are not supposed to. But in the how well do you know Gen AI, I was probably more in the middle category, the 54% of somebody who is trying to understand it and somewhat knows it. So the challenge of going after you and Manas is that everything that I wanted to say is probably already been said. And I'm grappling here a bit. Over the last few months, actually, every time I've participated in any session on Gen AI, I will confess the song, How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria from The Sound of Music keeps coming up. That one song has the word Maria appear some 50, 55 times. Gen AI almost is that term now. So there is no conversation that's complete without this term. As Ashish said, I lead the TMT practice, technology, media, telecom. We do a lot of work with tech clients. And this has been, the word burning platform doesn't even start describing the topic. Just go to the next slide. To the second question in the poll that you had, yes, I've also been using Gen AI. My teenage kids tease me that I have finally found two friends, one in ChatGPT and the other in Bard. I talk to them more than I talk with my kids, apparently. And it's good fun. But the fact of the matter is that the stats are well known. What was considered a big wave, which was Spotify, it took them 150 days to reach 1 million users. Insta came along, halved that. ChatGPT came along, and it achieved that in 1/15 of the time. Just some context, I know Ashish talked about it, but there are two axes to think about Gen AI. We go to the next slide. One is a temporal view, time-based view, and the other is a stack view. The temporal view effectively is rule-based, and then it moved to using 1,000 parameters to become machine learning, 10,000 parameters to get into deep learning, 10 million parameters to get into Gen AI, and now Gen AI uses over 175 billion parameters. So that's been the explosion and use of variables. My BTech project, and many of you who will be engineers on this call will know what a scary term that BTP used to be. My BTech project back in 1994 was on prosthetic limbs. So the Sudha Chandran limb kind of thing, connecting it to electrical signals and training the limb to move. And I was very proud when, I was just a student, but the prof I was working with, that paper got published in IEEE. And then when I go back and look at it, it used all of 35 variables or 35 inputs. And that was like really, really cutting edge at that point in time. So we are literally talking about 2 decades or more, 2.5 decades, and the kind of impact this has had. The other view, which is the stack view, if I just go to the next slide, please, is effectively the type of analytics. You have descriptive analytics, self-evident, diagnostic, predictive, and now Gen AI. Each of these analytics use cases has their own role to play. But when we look at data and we look at what is being spent today, what is likely spent over the next few years, then we see some sectors come out quite pronounced as to where there's likely to be the biggest shift. I know in the previous survey, we had TMT and FS kind of the top two. Actually, BFSI, with its spend on data and technology, BFSI has the highest spend on data and technology as a percentage of revenue amongst all sectors. So it's not surprising that therefore that rules the roost in terms of the movement towards GenAI. But Ashish called it out right, actually. Healthcare is the area which the base isn't the highest from a tech spend perspective, but the growth on a lower base is likely to be the highest. If we just move on, I'm just going to show some more data points. Just move to the next slide, please. This has been the explosion of investments. Most of you, any of you who work in any organizations know that ultimately you can have any kind of vision and strategy, but what gets executed is what gets the most investment: time, money, and resources. The fact of the matter is that today, while we speak, GenAI has the highest spend amongst all technologies. There's a report we had published back in December where we had explored 55 different technologies. And out of all 55, GenAI is the technology that is having the highest growth in annual investments from enterprises, PEs, VCs, and so on. So the chances, it has a good chance of success just because of the amount of momentum being put behind it. Just moving on, there are 2 points of views that are emerging. The one point of view, if you just go to the next slide, which Manas used the word, there's excitement, there's palpable excitement. Ashish said traditional business models are getting destroyed, but these are like big words that there is a huge momentum to GenAI. There's another school of thought, and let's not hide that school of thought under the carpet. There are a bunch of client CEOs I've met, both in tech companies and enterprise companies, who will not say so publicly, but will agree to say that, look, we've seen enough technologies. All of them have their own pathway. Some work, some don't work. Yes, GenAI is one more technology. Fine. I mean, we will see, and we'll see where it goes. If you see this chart in terms of adoption and penetration, I wrote a paper almost 10 years back where we predicted blockchain to be the next big thing. Have been proven actually fantastically wrong. So there is a lot of momentum, but there is a school of thought as to whether GenAI will really live up to its expectations or not. My personal point of view on this, if we go to the next page, is that GenAI is a bit different because of 5 key reasons. The first 2 reasons, it has lowered the barrier of entry and the use cases are across the board. These 2 reasons make it very, very scalable and very user-friendly. One of the statements Steve Jobs had made when he launched the iPhone, actually when he launched the iPod, was he dismissed this phrase change management. He said change management is the buzzword for consultants like us because that's how you go and sell work. Ultimately, if a product is good, it should not require any change management. People should just be able to use it. I genuinely believe in that. GenAI is just easy to use and it is scalable. It is obviously, the machine learning makes it learn as you go. But the last 2 points are very interesting. The 4th point is because it's not code in some syntax and some programming language that many of us, and through our engineering years, etc., learn, but because it's common language, it goes from a black box of, oh God, I don't know what sits behind this code, to a glass box. I can actually tell it what to do. And the final point, I think Gurpreet had a question, will it ever solve the problem of emotion? We don't know. But there were 2 bastions that the digital transformation wave had not been able to solve. Those 2 bastions were context and emotions. GenAI professes to solve one of those 2 bastions, and that is context. Because of the large language model and the foundational models, as you type things, it can predict what is the next thing and therefore can solve for a lot of that context. And whether it will solve for emotion or not remains to be seen. There are enough technologies that are being invested to solve for it, but we don't yet have a great solve for it. I'll take 2 or 3 more minutes really to go to the next slide and just talk about some of these data points. When I talked about the 5 changes, I said this is across the board. You see the changes happening across all industries, different use cases across. tech, consumer, biopharma, financial institutions, automotive, insurance. Moving on to the next page. And you'll see this split across by industry, by function. So I know there was a little poll on this earlier. We talked about FI and healthcare being two areas where there's large, but actually you see this across the board. Interestingly, when we talk about from a functional standpoint, marketing, customer support, and human HR are three areas. So I know, Ashish, you want to discuss with Manu the topic of skilling, very HR related. Customer support actually was already getting very disrupted and is one area which is likely to get most disrupted. And on the next page, I'll take the classic example of marketing. I know, Ashish, you had the slide, you had a logo on Coke, but I don't know how many of you have seen this ad called Masterpiece? I mean, I won't be able to see a show of hands on this webinar, but if you have not, please go to YouTube and see, just do a search for Coke Masterpiece. The ad is called Masterpiece, and it is a masterpiece. It is about a bottle traveling through the artistic masterpieces around the world. This ad was generated by GenAI to some prompts that the marketing team of Coke had provided. By the way, one of my classmates was involved in that, so particularly proud of that story. Swiftly moving on, and I mean, there are various other stories, that are behind these logos on this page. But actually, I'll just, I'll skip a couple of slides. Aru, if you just move on. Bunch of technologies, I won't get into this. Very busy slide. But I do agree with Ashish's hypothesis. I don't think the quality or accuracy of data is going to be the big challenge. That will get solved. Yes, today it may feel like a big challenge, but there'll be enough GenAI models to test the GenAI data to make sure that's accurate. The challenge will come in the implementation and the use of data, and to some extent, the ethics and the data privacy around it. So there is a bunch of challenges that organizations will be solving for, and you see some logos as to how some exemplars of organizations who have already started solving for it. And I'll touch upon the last slide. If you move on, just keep moving to the next page. This is about the services industry. And I know Manas touched upon it, and I will kind of accentuate that point. There are threats from a professional services and a tech services standpoint. Clients will ask for a higher productivity, lower win rate, loss of revenue, lower number of people or FTEs used. But there's also an equal, and we believe a much greater opportunity to make this work. What's going to happen in the tech services and the professional service industry is there's going to be a net creation. Our belief is that there's going to be a net augmentation of jobs. However, the gap between the winners and the losers will be very broad. The winners will take a much higher share of that, and the losers will lose out significantly. We saw a bit of that gap happen in the last 10 years through digital transformation. That gap's likely to widen. So at this point, I'll just shut up. And I know I regurgitated a lot of Manas, what you and Ashish said, but that's me being a consultant. Over to you, Ashish.
No, thank you so much, Rajiv. It was really very well structured and well articulated. So maybe what I could do is now we have about 20 minutes, and I'm really praying that the Chandrayaan lands before that, before we wrap up. Let's see if it happens. But nonetheless, maybe I can shoot a few questions to you, Manas, first, and then do the same with you, Rajiv. And then in the meantime, I'll also try and incorporate some of the questions which are appearing in the chat window. So, Manas, very insightfully, you said not 3 months, not 30 years. So from your standpoint, what are clients asking you to do, or what, if you can talk about a few situations where clients came to you, because in some way or the other, everybody is really struggling to figure out what to do.
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is that people have point use cases in mind, and they have developed them with us, or they are in the process of investigating them with us. And there's a lot of that going on, but there is also the understanding that in the background that, fundamental changes in the way the enterprise architecture is built up to really leverage AI have to take place, right? So So there is this combination of this more agile, quick wins kind of mode. And then this at the back, there's this larger strategic thinking around does the organization design still make sense? And it may not make sense any longer, right? Lots of things will look very different a few years from now. So depending on whether the organization is anyways in a state of flux, if it is anyways in a state of flux, this is a lovely time to be asking those questions. If it is not, then I think the questions are sort of being parked in a longer term sort of thread or track. But there's just a lot happening, in the point solutions, right? I mean, you talked of pharma, you talked of healthcare, you talked of, I don't know if you talked of energy or utilities, you talked of BFSI. There's just a lot of point solutions that have been built, are being built around GenAI.
Right. So that's a good segue into the next question I had. You mentioned fluidic, if I got the word right. And I've known you and your organization for a long time, Manas, and I know how you have created these, circles of capability. And I remember 5 years back, you were drawing out your org structure on the board in your office. So first question is, what is the impact of Gen AI related projects, initiatives within any organization on the org structure? And linked to that, and I also see some questions there on the Q&A window around skilling. So some anonymous person writes, what are the learning paths or skills? So maybe you can address that. And I think there was another question around recruitment. Somebody wants to automate. Rupak was talking about Gen AI automating the entire recruitment process. So maybe some of these three things you can just sort of integrate in your answer.
Sure. The first one is very interesting, the impact of GenAI on org design. I think when I did my PhD, my goal was to do that on org design. I couldn't do that. We didn't have a department in IIT Delhi that could actually do that. Because we were consulting in Europe and we realized that it was mainly around decision support, by the way. So a lot of AI driven, not AI, but more optimization driven decision support. And a lot of it was around crossing the borders between different departments, right? And it was the purchasing would buy it in a certain way, but production needed something different, and optimizing that and connecting that had lots of opportunities. And so when we built our company also, we tried to make it as unsiloed as possible. And so, but now when you look at GenAI and you look at, so there was a hope that maybe with better analytics and transparency of data and availability of data, these silos would go away. But that has not really happened. And, just the finite ability to look at a report or the finite ability to process a report and just I think the more, the desire to control information and all that still persists in most organizations. But GenAI has, with this conversational aspect, have the opportunity to break that. And at Nagarro, we built for ourselves and then for other clients this tool called Ginger, with very simple, AI stuff. Now we can do a lot more with that. And when Satya Nadella talks about, the organization of the future, I can almost hear a sort of a resonance of what we have been trying to achieve, trying to use these tools to actually build this fluidic organization. So I can go on and on about it. I don't want to do that here, but it's really, I think, a tremendous opportunity. And I think if we're just looking at the point solutions, then we are missing the big picture. So that's one part. I think the training part is fascinating, right? Because most engineers are like, they're nerds, and they have in a positive way, but they have to unlearn a lot, right? So the way that, so I'll give you 2 or 3 things, for example. So for example, there's a lot of pride that I know this language, I know that framework, I know this and that. That's less relevant because GenAI can just translate, right? So that's less relevant. There's also an application development way of thinking about the work they're doing, rather than a data way of thinking about the work they're doing. So a lot has to be unlearned. There is a lot of learning that has to be done on engineering topics, and there's a lot of information available, a lot of content available that people can use. There's a lot of learning on how to apply this in enterprise context, which is more of a practice thing, right? We don't have courses that allow you to do that trivially, right? So that's more of a practice thing. And I think the third thing is that there is, by the way, it's a practice thing, and it's a multidisciplinary thing, because it's not just the skill set that you have, but how will the project run, and what are the business aspects, and so on, right? So it's a multidisciplinary thing. And I think there's another aspect that we have to sort of teach, which is beyond the engineering, the creativity, the business understanding, and understanding how a project comes together, how stakeholders are managed, and so on. I think this part also comes into play, because the team sizes are not going to be huge. This is not about throwing 1,000 people to solve one GenAI problem. These are small teams, and the way they work has to be more multidisciplinary. So I think there's just a lot that has to be done, and we have been sort of seeing this coming for a few years, trying to be agile, trying to build small teams. We haven't accomplished it fully at all, but at least that's the goal that we want to achieve. In some ways, I think the BCGs of the world are already there. It's more than we are in some ways, right? I think the third point on recruitment, we already are. So we get about a few 100,000 or a few 100,000 resumes a year, and we are just processing them, right? And now we're using GenAI to process them, right? And we are working on using GenAI for allocations. We're using, so a lot of that process will get automated, right? And that's kind of where the job efficiency, job impact is there, where a topic or a process is just repeated over and over again without too much new context, then that is very automatable with GenAI. So that's kind of the key things.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Rajiv, I had two questions for you. First, let me just look at the window. So Tarun Chibber is asking, since professional services firms deal with a lot of data, client data, or their own internal data, does it make sense for them to have their own GenAI tools behind their own firewalls? And does this result in any significant ROI? So that's one question. And linked to that, Noah is asking about pretty much the same question, I guess, but how are consulting firms such as BCG leveraging AI both internally and externally? And related to that, I had the question, you mentioned that margins would increase, right? On one of your slides, you had that in spite of all the challenges that one might face, but margins will go up. So is that in the form of, for a consulting firm, is that in the form of premium pricing, or why would the margins go up? So if you can quickly address these few questions, please.
Sure. So look, first of all, GenAI, with all that it can do from a data standpoint, etc., is still a new and an emerging concept. I don't think, to the first question that you posed, there is a sharp point of view yet in terms of what kind of models and platforms should one have, whether it should be behind one's own firewall, etc., or not. I mean, if I gave you an answer, I would really be, saying something that's not yet played out. Our professional services firm, consulting firms, and Ashish, you, Manas, me, all of us in our respective organizations thinking about this, given that most of our work is with client data, absolutely we are, but I don't think there's yet an emergent answer. Everyone's working through it, and working through it along the lines of client data confidentiality, laws, etc., etc. So sorry, I don't have a very sharp answer to that. I think it's emerging. In terms of Noah's question about how is BCG using GenAI internally, externally, so with a big smile on my face, I can say externally we're using it very, very well. Every time something like this happens, it's great for firms like us, because suddenly clients want to know what to do about it, and that's where we become very, very relevant. It's not that we know more than our clients, but because we work across many clients very quickly, we are able to create a knowledge base that our clients find valuable. And a couple of weeks back, Friday before last, we had 85 projects going on GenAI as a topic. So while this year's been a bit tough from an overall climate standpoint, etc., GenAI has been a breath of fresh air for the amount of work we're doing. So that's externally. Internally, I'm one of the pilot users of one of the GenAI tools. I usually go to a client meeting. I take notes. The client tells me about some problems, etc., etc. I promise to come back with some thoughts on it. I then usually send an email or a WhatsApp to my team saying, okay, this is the conversation. These are the bullet points I had. By the way, it can be pulled up a perspective together, and you can use these 3 documents from these 3 different places. As a pilot user of a GenAI tool, it's just sending that email. I put it into the tool, and the tool produced a proposal deck for me. I sent it some comments, and the next 30 seconds, it refined that proposal deck. Effectively, what my team would have done in 4 to 5 days, this did it. And I won't even say 70% of quality or 110% of quality. I think I wouldn't have made the difference whether a team member did it or GenAI did it. So,
I mean, really, it was that well done. I mean, you could not.
it was actually better.
Wow.
Now you can judge the quality of work for that besides.
Yeah.
No, I was blown away. I was literally blown away. It wasn't a complex ask, to be fair, but still. So internally, I saw there was another question about impact on strategy consulting, et cetera, et cetera. I think when I started consulting back in 1997, my first project was at JK Tires in Kankroli. I used to take a car to go to Udaipur. I was doing some scrap reduction work. I used to take a car to Udaipur to go to the library to find scrap reduction data. Then I would take a flight once a fortnight to come to Delhi to go to a bigger library to get better data. And then I would go back and apply that. Obviously, none of the consultants have done that. That doesn't mean my job went away. So one clear message to all the young folks in my team is the role is going to change. What will it be and how will it be remains to be seen, but the role will definitely change. In terms of your question, therefore, on margins, the margin point was not about consulting, but it was more about any professional services firms and largely also IT services firms. Any pyramid, the top of the pyramid carries higher margin, lower volume. We expect that some of the more, kind of stating the obvious, some of the more repetitive roles, which are more commoditized and has more price pressures, are likely to get replaced by technology and GenAI and other forms of technology and automation and so on. And therefore, the entire shift will be up the pyramid. And that's what will drive a higher margin till those elements start becoming commoditized.
Okay. Great. Rajiv, one question to you on implementation and execution. And I was really surprised with the poll results because I would have felt that everybody is grappling with what to do, how to do it, and so on. And you also mentioned that on one of your slides that actually implementation challenges are huge, right? So given that we might have a lot of people here who are wondering, what do I do? How do I start? What is the journey like? What should I be aware of? So without sending me an invoice, if you can give us the BCG point of view on this as to over 2-3 minutes, how does one start? And what is the way to programmatically do this?
Without sending the invoice is the interesting part. But look, I have been, I've seen the entire digital transformation era play out. And there have been different ways we looked at it. Some more holistically, some more use case led, and so on and so forth. Actually, my view on this is being tactical is actually being strategic. Trying to get to 100% answer about what is my 3-year plan, 5-year plan for something as new as this is probably biting off more than one can chew. So I like the phrase, letting 1,000 flowers bloom. I'm assuming everyone on this call or anyone else asking the question belongs to some sector, some domain, some function. It is okay to think what are the specific use cases in that area and get going on that. And as you do 1 or 2 or 3 of them, the horizons open up and you start learning a few more things. So my urge would be, don't get worried with all the questions here. What do I do? What do I learn, etc. And there could be so many questions. One has a risk of getting frozen by almost trying to answer all those questions before getting started. At the very least, just do a training course, just get going in your function, in your organization, get started, let 1,000 flowers bloom, appreciate that many of them will perish, but that will set us on the right path. I think in some period of time, and it's not 3 months, it's not 30 years, you can take a guess what it is, maybe 18 months, 24 months, 30 months, but in that order of magnitude, we will start seeing convergence. We will start seeing where the big rocks are. But till we see that, no need to try and become Nostradamus and predict that either.
Right, right. Rajiv, some people are requesting for your slides.
Yeah, I'll share a set of slides, Ashish, offline, and then you can share it with the...
Yeah, so please send us whatever you want us to share, and we'll share it. Another question for you, Rajiv. Do you believe there is a first mover advantage in terms of adopting GenAI, or everybody anyways catches up later on?
No, I mean, I guess you, Manas, me are of a similar decade. I'm obviously the youngest, but that's okay. We've seen various waves of technology before us, and we've researched enough through the 70s at least, which is probably the new modern technology era. I'm sure as BCG, we could produce some slides on it very easily, but first movers have created immense value. So whether it was the ERP or core banking era, whether it was the internet and .com era, whether it was the digital and mobility era, whether it was cloud, and hence by extrapolation, whether it is AI and then GenAI, I am convinced that being a fast follower is not the only answer here.
Manas, do you have a point of view on this question?
No, I agree with Rajiv completely. I think that there is the chance to build at least a temporary advantage. Maybe in the long run, everyone catches up, but in the long run, we are all dead, right? So, but I think one comment to Rajiv's point about 1,000 flowers bloom, though, I think that governance, etc., is a topic here, which can be so. I think it's an interesting. I find it fascinating how this tension between just letting things go and I think you need that, and at the same time you need some structure and some governance, and I think that's what we are trying to also bring to our clients, that this sort of twin track kind of thinking. But it's an interesting time for all of us.
Right. Unfortunately, I mean, this is such a fascinating discussion, and there are tons of questions which people are posing, but unfortunately, we are now about 90 seconds away from the webinar getting over. So I think I would like to wrap it up here.
I'll just make one point, Ashish, if you allow me, for 30 seconds. There's a lot of questions on the risks and double-edged sword and so on and so forth. And I would be...
You want to pick it up, Rajiv, quickly?
Yeah, just very quickly. Every technology, right from the father of the Nobel Prize discovering dynamite, every technology has had a double-edged sword. Now, I don't want to brush the risks of GenAI under the carpet by any stretch of the imagination, but the number of policymakers and technologists and enterprise leaders who are thinking through it, and the amount of thinking and intellectual and financial capital being spent behind it, I personally belong to the school of thought that it will get solved. And therefore, Yuval Noah Harari, Sapiens, you can't stop a technology just because you're afraid of its outcomes. So the more we start embracing that this is the new reality, the better, knowing that the problems will get solved.
Very well said, Rajiv. Manas, your final 30 seconds on this point?
No, absolutely. I think that there's always the risk of bad actors, but there's always the risk of bad actors with guns and dynamite and atom bombs and whatever, right? I think that I would really hope that global standards evolve. I think the GDPR, although flawed, was at least an attempt at some sort of a like multinational standard. I wish global standards evolve on this topic. Maybe it's a pipe dream, but we can still dream.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, thank you so much. This was brilliant. I'm sure our audience also learned a lot in this webinar. Rajiv, if you can please send us the slides and we can circulate those, whatever is possible. And in my closing comment, would just like to thank everybody who spent this 1 hour with us. I think it's the starting of another journey, another tech journey for everybody. And this time around, it seems that almost everybody will get impacted for the better, I hope. And 10 years from now, when we look back, we will be able to say that prosperity and health and wellness and maybe even the climate situation has become better on the planet. So thank you so much. As everybody starts exiting from the webinar, a short feedback form will pop up. Please do fill that out. It'll help us just becoming better. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.